Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to today's webinar, which will tell you all about how to get a green card by investing in the US. We are hosting this webinar in partnership with Visa Centrale, Miller Mayer Attorneys, and the HomeFed Corporation. On behalf of Manila House, welcoming you today, this is Bambina Olivares, the Director of Programming. Let me introduce today's speakers. First up is a member of Manila House and a longtime partner and collaborator, Vicky Luis. She is the president of Golden Visa Centrale in the Philippines. She graduated from California and has been in the real estate and mortgage industry in the San Francisco Bay Area since the mid-90s. Vicky is one of the pioneers who brought the Portugal Golden Visa program to the Philippines and has had numerous sales with a 100% success rate. Next, we have Trevor Anderson, who is the director of EB5 financing at HomeFed Corporation. Sorry, that's HomeFed Corporation. He's been with HomeFed Corporation since 2014 as the director of EB5 financing. He spent his early years at HomeFed constructing and managing the company's financial models. Currently, he plays an integral role in HomeFed's EB5 offerings and spends much of his time managing the company's foreign investment-related marketing and compliance efforts. In addition to these responsibilities, he helps manage the company's multifamily residential development projects. Trevor earned a bachelor's degree in economics from Brigham Young University. Lily Zheng also joins us. She's the marketing director of Cota Vera EB5 project. Nicolai Hinrichsen is a partner at Miller Mayer. He has had over a decade of experience in EB5 immigration. He represents regional centers and developers in structuring EB5 compliant projects, either through initial regional central designation applications or by partnering with existing regional centers. He also represents individual investors obtaining permanent residence status through a regional center or direct EB5 investments. He regularly speaks at EB5 events throughout Asia. Prior to joining Miller Mayer, Mr. Hinrichsen practiced corporate and securities law in San Francisco and Paris, France. He is a member of the American Immigration Lawyers Association and the New York and California State Bar. He received his JD from Boston University Law School and his BA from the University of California at Berkeley. So I hope you enjoyed today's webinar, sorry. And let me turn you over to Vicky Luis right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Bambina. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Vicky Luis, president of Golden Visa Centrale. Thank you for joining us again. Today, I'm very excited to share with you how to get a green card or residency in the US by indirectly investing into a real estate project that has job creation, of which is necessary to get an EB5 investor's visa. In this webinar, we will explain how, with a US EB5 investor's visa, you can live, work, and study in the US. With one investment, you get to bring your spouse and all children under 21 years of age. How your kids can attend school and pay local residence rate instead of foreign tuition fees. How your children get to work after graduation without the need for a work sponsor. And how after 5 years of holding a green card, you can as well be a US citizen. Today, we are also excited to share about the concurrent filing, which is a game changer, wherein your kids who are currently in school or on a working visa in the US can truly benefit from this. It can be less than 6 months to get them to work and travel documentation through the EB5 program. So I'm very excited and proud to introduce the speakers this afternoon. As Bambina mentioned, we have our attorney, partner of Miller Mayer, attorney Nicolai Hinrichsen. Hello, Nicolai. Thank you for staying up with us. I know you're in Ithaca, New York.
Yes, hello. I'm pleased to be here today.
Thank you again, Nicolai. Also, we are joined by Trevor Anderson, who's also in the US like me. Thank you, Trevor. Trevor is from HomeFed Corp, Director of EB5 Financing. Thank you, Trevor, for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you. And of course, we have Lily Zheng. I work with Lily. She's the marketing director for the Cota Vera EB5 project. Hello, Lily. Thank you also for joining us today.
Thank you, Vicky. Hello, everyone.
Yes.
I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you, Lily. Ladies and gentlemen, at the end, we will have a Q&A. So please type in your questions and we will try to go over most of them. If they're consultative in nature, we will be happy to do a one-on-one meeting with you. We will post our numbers later on. But for now, I'd like to pass over the baton to Nicolai. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vicky. And let me go ahead and share my screen here and start my presentation. Okay, so as you heard, my name is Nicolai Hinrichsen. I'm the managing partner of Miller Mayer. I'm going to talk to you today about the immigration process of EB5. EB5 is a process that involves both immigration and investment. You're going to hear from Trevor and Lily later in the presentation about the specifics of the investment project that's being presented today. So Miller Mayer was founded way back in 1985. We're headquartered north of New York City, about 3 hours north in a town called Ithaca, New York. It's quite well known because it's home to one of the most famous universities in the United States, Cornell University, one of the so-called Ivy League schools. While Miller Mayer is best known internationally for the work that we do in EB5, we also do all other types of immigration. We do immigrant and non-immigrant categories, both in the family and employment-based categories. And while we represent a lot of EB5 investors, we also represent hospitals, startups, and many other industries. We've been widely recognized for our accomplishments in EB5 and in immigration law generally. We have been chair or co-chair of the American Immigration Lawyers Association EB5 committee multiple times. Our immigration practice was founded by a man named Stephen Yale Lair. He is a professor of law at Cornell University. Steve also publishes a 20-volume treatise that is considered the go-to reference for immigration attorneys, US courts, and his treatise has even been cited on multiple occasions by the US Supreme Court. Steve has also testified before the US Congress on EB5 matters. And Steve is the founder of IIUSA, which is the largest trade association in the United States that advocates on behalf of the EB5 investment program. I am a member of IIUSA's Public Policy Committee. We all regularly speak on immigration issues in the United States and around the world. And in particular, Steve is quoted on an almost daily basis in newspapers in the United States and around the world. And he also regularly appears on television. If you Google his name, you'll see his many quotations on immigration law and EB5 law. So Miller Mayer has been active in the EB5 program really since the beginning of the program back in the 1990s. And we have a pretty impressive track record. We are definitely one of the largest, if not the largest, law firm in the United States doing EB5 work. To date, we've done over 7,000 individual I-526 petitions. That's the first petition in the EB5 process. And on a later slide, I'm going to talk to you in a little more detail about the steps involved in EB5. Those I-526 petitions have led to over 12,000 green cards for individual investors and their dependents. We, in addition to representing individual EB5 investors, also represent regional centers in structuring EB5 compliant projects. I want to note that we do not represent Cota Vera. We review Cota Vera's project documents for purposes of making sure that, in our view, they comply with immigration rules, which we firmly believe that they do. But it's important for you to know that if you go forward in this process, I'm independent from Cota Vera. I only would represent you as the investor in the immigration process. So let me take a moment just to give you a little introduction to what EB5 is. I think many people may not be aware of the program, even though it's been around since 1990. EB stands for employment-based, fifth category. It was created by the Congress, the US Congress, in the 1990s to spur economic growth and investment into the United States. The program was recently reauthorized and significantly improved by way of something called the EB5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. The reason for, we call this the RIA, the reason for passage of the RIA was really because Congress felt that EB5 is an important foreign direct program. It had been around for a long time, and they wanted to change some components of the program, principally making the program better for new investors with enhanced oversight and reporting requirements. The RIA also increased the investment amount. So currently, if you invest in an EB5 project and the project is located in a targeted employment area, the investment amount is $800,000. Otherwise, the investment amount is $1,050,000. Another key component of EB5 is that you must create jobs. So you have to show the US government that your investment will create at least 10 jobs for US workers. Now, there are about 10,000 EB5 visas available every year. And within those, there are certain visas that are set aside for something called the EB5 Regional Center Program. So there are actually, you could call it, two different kinds of EB5. There's what we call the standalone program, where you might invest in your own business. And then there's something called the Regional Center Program, which Congress created in 1992 to spur even more interest in the EB5 category. So a regional center is an entity that's authorized by the USCIS. That's the US entity that administers the EB5 program. The USCIS approves regional center designation to invest in certain geographies in the United States and in certain industries. The big advantage to investing in a regional center sponsored EB5 project is that you can pool investor funds. So instead of investing on your own, say in a business, you can invest alongside many other EB5 investors. And the regional center can then pool that money and deploy it into a project, typically by way of a loan. This allows the regional center to collateralize the loan and also to have an exit strategy so that hopefully you obtain your principal EB5 investment back after a period of time. The other big benefit to a regional center investment is job creation. So if you decide to invest in your own project, let's say you build a hotel, you can only count the direct jobs of that hotel, that people that are working directly in that hotel. In the Regional Center Program, you can use something called economic modeling, where you are measuring the overall impact of the hotel, including hotel construction and upstream and downstream jobs that are created as a result of that construction and operation of the hotel. So for example, cement manufacturers, wood fabricators, glass manufacturers, etc. All of those industries would be impacted by, say, a large hotel or residential construction project. And we can measure that impact very easily in something called an economic report. And that change, the establishment of the Regional Center program really provided the foundation for the tremendous success that we saw in the EB-5 program, principally starting in 2008 after the financial crisis. EB-5 really emerged as an attractive source of alternative financing. And you can see from the numbers here, almost $30 billion of foreign direct investment is attributable to EB-5, excuse me, investment. Over 700,000 jobs have been created for US workers, and thousands of families from around the world have succeeded in obtaining green cards, and many of those also citizenship eventually. And why is the EB-5 program so popular? Well, compared to other visa categories, it's incredibly flexible. So most other employment-based visa categories require you to have a sponsor, an employer who will file a petition on your behalf. In EB-5, you don't need that. You can self-petition. As Vicky mentioned, the green card is available for the principal investor as well as his or her immediate family. So that would mean their spouse and children under 21. You can invest in, or you can live anywhere in the United States. It doesn't have to be where you are making your EB-5 investment. For example, in this case, we're going to be discussing, or Trevor's going to talk about an investment in San Diego, which is an absolutely lovely place to live. So if you wanted to live in San Diego, that would be fine, but you can live anywhere in the US that you desire. The other benefit with the Regional Center program is that you don't have any day-to-day managerial obligations. You have some general policy-making positions with respect to the initial investment, but they're very minor, and so you are essentially free to pursue any other business interests in the United States that you want, live, and as I said, live and work anywhere you would like. One of the really great benefits is, of course, that kids can attend school, and often after a period of time, they can pay in-state tuition. In-state tuition requirements vary by school and by state, but they can establish residency at some stage. They can also get scholarships and financial aid that they wouldn't otherwise be eligible for if they were just attending school in F status. When they graduate from school, they are, in virtue of being green card holders, of course, immediately part of the US workforce. So many foreign students that are in the United States in F status would have to find some other way to stay in the United States, either by getting an H-1B or possibly getting married to a US citizen. There aren't actually a lot of very good options for students to stay in the US other than really an H-1B or going on to get an additional degree and staying longer in the US in F status. But with EB-5, there is now a real immigration strategy, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that specifically. It's something called concurrent filing, where a student can, before they graduate, actually create a strategy that will permit them to stay in the US and to work and to live until their EB-5 green card is ultimately approved. An individual can become a citizen 5 years after getting the conditional and ultimately the permanent green card. You don't have to, it's not obligatory, but it is an option. One big benefit to becoming a US citizen is that you can then sponsor your parents to come to the United States under something called the immediate relative category. What that means is that under the principle of family reunification, you can bring your mom and dad to the United States pretty quickly. There's no numerical limitation in the immediate family category. It's just a question of submitting the forms and waiting for the government to adjudicate the forms. The process typically takes about 1 year. So I mentioned that EB-5 is subject to a numerical limitation of approximately 10,000 green cards per year. And in fact, most family-sponsored and employment-based green cards are subject to numerical limitations. And what you see on the screen here is something called the Visa Bulletin, which is issued every month by the US Department of State. And this is the way that the US government manages those numbers, those allocations of visas. And you can see here that I've highlighted the Philippines. You can see on the right all of the family-sponsored categories. And you can see that many of them are heavily retrogressed. So for example, if you were a green card holder and you were going to sponsor in the F4 categories for a brother or a sister, you are retrogressed till April of 2004. So that's a very, very long wait in order for somebody from the Philippines to be able to obtain a green card. You can see on the left side that EB-5 is current for the Philippines. What that means is that there's no retrogression for EB-5, that you can proceed immediately to get a visa, either by going to the consulate or consular processing. And I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Whoops. So let me talk a little bit here about the EB-5 process. This looks a little complicated, but it's actually not that bad. So essentially you have 3 steps. The first step is filing something called an I-526 form. That form is going to have a little bit of information about the project you're investing into. And then principally, it's going to have information about how you obtain the money to make the investment. The US government, of course, does not want to grant an immigration benefit like a green card to somebody that's obtained their money unlawfully. And so a big part of my job in this process is to strategize with my clients about the best way of funding an EB-5 investment. So you file the I-526, and it used to be that you couldn't take the next step in the EB-5 process until that I-526 petition was approved. But now there's something called concurrent filing, which permits you to obtain work and travel authorization. You file that request at the very same time that you file the I-526 petition. And you can remain in the United States during the time that the I-526 petition is pending with work and travel authorization. If you are not already in the United States, you can do the sort of more traditional method, if you will, which is consular processing. So if any of you have ever gone to the consulate to get a B visa to come to the United States, that's a non-immigrant visa. You fill out something called a DS-160, and then you leave your passport and you get it back with a visa inside the passport. It's very similar for an immigrant visa, like the one you get from an I-526 petition. The form is just called a DS-260, and it has a few more questions than the DS-160, but you get that visa back, and it allows you to travel to the US. And you do that, and let's say you land in San Francisco, you are admitted at the port of entry, and the visa that's in your passport will be stamped. And that stamp actually has legal significance. The moment that that stamp hits your visa, you become a conditional permanent resident. We call it CPR status. You get a conditional green card. Actually, later you get the green card in the mail. It's usually mailed to our office, and we'll send it to you wherever you may be. But that is the start date of your CPR status. If you were filing concurrently, the start date would be the approval date of the I-485 form. That's the form that is requesting the US government to adjust your status from a non-immigrant status to an immigrant status. And I'm going to have another slide where I talk a little more specifically about the concurrent filing process. In any event, you have a 2-year conditional green card in EB-5. And then 90 days before the 2-year anniversary of the start of your conditional permanent resident status, you file an I-829 petition. And that petition is very straightforward. It really just shows the government two things. First, that you haven't been repaid, that your EB-5 investment is still in the entity you invested into. And two, most importantly, that your investment has resulted in the creation of 10 jobs. And I know Trevor and Lily are going to talk about the job creation of their project and the timing of that project. So you will see how that 829 job creation risk is really mitigated, if not entirely eliminated, in virtue of the structure of that project. Once the I-829 petition is approved, you then have your permanent green card. Some people call that the 10-year green card. That doesn't mean that you have to reapply after 10 years. It's very much like a driver's license. You just have to get a new one with new biometrics, a new photo, and a new fingerprint. You then have that green card permanently. I mentioned getting citizenship. So it's important to understand that the 2 years of conditional status count towards that citizenship requirement, which is 5 years. So in essence, what that means is shortly after your 829 petition actually is approved, you would likely be able to apply for US citizenship. So concurrent filing, as Vicky mentioned, this really is a game changer in EB-5. So I wanted to spend a little more time to flesh out exactly what the requirements are and what the process looks like. This is particularly good potentially for students that are in the United States that may not have any other options. So the requirements are that you must be admitted to the United States in valid non-immigrant status. So that's generally as a student, as an F1 student or a J1 student, or another non-immigrant category, perhaps like an H1B specialty worker category. The other requirement is that a visa must be available. And as I showed you on the visa bulletin for September and the one for November, the Philippine category for EB-5 is current, and we expect it to be current for many, many, many years. Once you file concurrent filing really consists of 3 forms. The I-485 form, which is asking the government to adjust a person's status from non-immigrant to immigrant. That 485 form cannot be approved by the government until the I-526 form is approved. And as you saw on my previous slide, we expect that to take 18 to 24 months, maybe a little faster. USCIS is putting a lot of resources into speeding up their adjudication. But let's say, for the sake of this example, that that's the general time frame. Well, so the 485 will remain pending during that period of time. But along with the 485, you also file an I-131 to get travel authorization and an I-765 to get work authorization. Those 2 forms take about 5 to 6 months to be approved. And after they're approved, you really have essentially all of the rights that you have under a green card. I sometimes call the combo card that is often issued that grants you both the work and the travel authorization, a green card light. You have that combo card for 2 years. You can renew it indefinitely as long as the 485 is pending. And you can see that here's a redacted picture of it. It looks very much like a green card because it is very much like a green card. And again, this is now really an incredible option for somebody who is already in the United States to have this interim status while they're waiting for their final green card to be issued. So if this is interesting to you, you might be wondering, well, I have some money. How do I do this EB-5 thing? And let me conclude my presentation by talking a little bit about what we call the source and the path of the funds. So as I mentioned, USCIS wants to make sure that the money that you are investing has been lawfully earned. And for the USCIS, that's a two-part analysis. They want to know how you earned the money. That's what we call the source of funds. And then they want to know how you moved that money from the source all the way to the investment in the EB5 project. And we call that the path of funds. And of course, everyone's finances and source of funds are different. So the source and path can have some complexity depending on what your specific circumstances are. Many people also have multiple strategies in terms of how they can fund an EB5 investment. And that's where I come in terms of meeting with the families and financial advisors and structuring EB5 investments in a way that perhaps minimizes tax obligations and maximizes the chance that USCIS will easily approve the EB5 petition without question. So we like to keep things as simple as possible, but we recognize that sometimes people have financial arrangements that may not be so simple. But generally, what we see the majority of our EB5 clients do is use an asset, typically an aged asset like a real estate purchase, to either sell it or take a mortgage on it for purposes of funding the EB5 investment. The reason that that's popular is that that transaction is typically undertaken specifically to fund the EB5 investment. So all of the investment documents are there. The transaction is very fresh, if you will, for EB5, and it's very easy for the USCIS to see where the money is coming from. Since we're often working with an aged asset, that is a house that you purchased likely many years ago, 10 or 15 years ago, the purchase price of the house is likely much smaller than its present day value. And so it's easier for you to provide what we call a pattern of income evidence to show that you were able to afford the house when you purchased it many years ago. One other popular source of funds that we do see is a company loan. So if you have your own company, you can borrow money from that company, or you can get a dividend in order to fund your EB5 investment. Often people prefer to borrow the money because it's then not a taxable event. But where the USCIS is not going to question where a bank gets the money to make a loan, for example, in a mortgage structure, the USCIS is going to want to know a lot of information about the company making the loan. So in that structure, we would usually be including 7 years of financial statements of the company, 7 years of tax returns, et cetera. So it's a bit more of an involved process. And many people just don't, aren't inclined to disclose that amount of information about their company. Though we do many company loans, it is a relatively popular way to fund an EB5 investment, but by no means as popular as mortgages or asset sales. Earned income is also quite popular. That is the money that you earn from your employment. That can be salary or bonuses. Generally, we need to show the accumulation of funds. So we show salary deposit into a bank account. And then typically there are some interim investments where you take your salary and you put it in some sort of investment product. And then that investment product is liquidated for purposes of making the EB5 investment. Two important points here before I finish. One is that gifts are permitted. So if you have children that want to do EB5, and the majority of our clients really are doing this for their kids, you can gift your money to the children. And essentially what happens is that you step into the shoes of your child for purposes of the source of funds analysis. USCIS is going to shift its focus to the person granting the gift. And that's where the source of funds analysis will be done. You can do multiple gifts and multiple sources of funds. So $800,000 is a lot of money. If you have a house, for example, that's valued at $500,000, you can do part of the EB5 investment using those proceeds and then make up the balance from earned income or other source of funds. This is not an exhaustive list. This is just the most common sources that we see, but we've had all sorts of source of funds in the past. We've had court judgments. We've had people that have won the lottery. We've had people sell famous works of art. So as long as the source of the funds is legal, it can be used for EB-5. So that concludes my presentation. And again, I think we're saving the questions for the end of the webinar. But if you have any questions on the materials that I presented, I look forward to answering those questions at the end of the presentation. And so without further ado, I will turn that over to Trevor or Lily.
I think that'll be me. Let me find my slides here. Is that showing up for everyone? Okay, everyone. My name is Trevor Anderson. I am the director of EB-5 for HomeFed Corporation. I am on the wrong slide here. Let me start at the beginning. That'll make things a little bit easier. My goal here is to tell you a little bit about HomeFed Corporation and our participation in the EB-5 program. And hopefully you find what we have to offer interesting to you. So HomeFed Corporation is a real estate development company. We are based in San Diego, California, which is where I am at this moment. We are wholly owned by a much larger company called Jefferies Financial Group, and they are traded on the New York Stock Exchange. This is somewhat unique in the EB-5 world. There's not a lot of public companies involved with EB-5. So this should give you, some encouragement and some assurity that you're dealing with a very reputable company that takes every precaution. This slide here indicates some of our various awards we won over the years for all of our many different development projects. On this slide, you can see that we have projects around the United States, but we're primarily focused on the East and West Coast. But again, we're heavily focused in California, specifically Southern California, and that is where our current EB-5 project was, as well as our previous EB-5 project, which we will talk more about. These next few slides just give you a little taste of the different projects that HomeFed has around the country. So we've got a little bit of variety, ranging from a large office building and hotel in New York City to a quaint, lifestyle community in South Carolina. Again, more projects in Virginia, the village of Ascaya, we will talk more about later. Sweet Bay is a beautiful project in the panhandle of Florida. San Elijo Hills, another very successful San Diego project. Finita Ranch, Wild Cherry Canyon, future projects happening here in San Diego as well. And that brings us to Cota Vera. So Cota Vera is our newest project, and it is our current EB-5 offering. Again, HomeFed Corporation is the developer of this project. We are spending in excess of $900 million on this project. In total, the EB-5 funds will be up to $171 million, so 19% of the total capital stack. That's funds coming from 268 investors. It's a 5-year loan term, which we will talk more about that going forward. And very importantly, it is a first position loan. So we give our investors a first trust deed as security. A little bit about California, for those that may not be familiar with it. San Diego is in the very southern end of California. San Francisco is up near Central California. Then you have Los Angeles and San Diego. San Diego is a very highly sought after destination. We have lots and lots of entertainment, vacation attractions, very, very good schools, and a very, very strong economy with a growing job market. Especially in these last couple of years, we've seen a large influx, especially in the technology space. A lot of people moving to San Diego and opening businesses here. It's one of the top 10 destinations in the United States. It was ranked #1 in income growth, and we don't seem to be slowing down. We've seen a lot of people from the Bay Area and Los Angeles, moving to San Diego just in these last couple of years. They're realizing what a great destination it is. So the Cota Vera project is very close to downtown San Diego. It's about a 20-minute drive to downtown and about a 20-minute drive to the beautiful beaches of San Diego. The Otay Ranch is a master plan community, the largest of its kind in San Diego. In total, it'll be composed of about 30,000 homes. As of today, that Otay Ranch community is about 60% complete, with most of the remaining homes to be built by HomeFed Corporation. So Cota Vera is the newest community within Otay Ranch, and it is also the best-selling community in the Otay Ranch. Our first project in the Otay Ranch was called the Village of Iskaya. At that project, we raised $125 million from 250 investors, and that project was the best-selling community in San Diego. It is now 100% sold out. We have apartments in that project as well that are 100% rented, and it's been a phenomenal success. All of our EB5 investors received their jobs, and we had about 5,000 jobs created, which is 20 jobs per investor. And you heard Nick talking about the importance of that job requirement, which is 10 jobs per investor. And we're following that same business plan here at Cota Vera, both in terms of the economics and also the deal structure for our EB5 investors. So just like at Iskaya, we will have a community center, we'll have single family homes for sale, we'll have apartments for rent, we'll have parks, we'll have shopping, we'll have restaurants. And that's what makes us so successful with our projects. We're not just building generic homes, we're actually building a community where people can thrive, where they can grow and become the best version of themselves. This is an example of the homes that we are building. This is our pictures from the actual homes at the Village of Iskaya. And the homes at Cota Vera are modeled after the homes at Iskaya. The homes start at about 550,000 and go up to over 1.3 million, depending on options and location premiums. This is a picture of Cota Vera just from this month. This is one of our recent construction updates. You can see what we have sold, about 360 single family homes, and about 194 of those have closed, meaning that the families have moved in and they actually live at Cota Vera. Our first apartment project is well underway. We have about 80 apartments already leased, with more to come in the coming months. So we're humming along. We're doing very, very well. We're just trying to keep up with the amazing demand in San Diego. We're building homes as fast as we can, and we're selling them at record prices. So needless to say, things are going very well. Again, back to that job creation number, we are anticipating 4,000 jobs, and that's a very conservative number, but that's 15 jobs per investor. As of today, we've got about 2,500 jobs already created. So that means that even if you haven't invested yet, the jobs are already there to satisfy that very important requirement to get your green card. So we can minimize or mitigate that risk and make this very easy for you. This is probably the most important thing that you should remember about our project and what makes us unique in the EB5 space. And that is that we put our investors in the first position in the capital stack. There is no bank debt in front of the investor. The investor is essentially like the bank. It's the safest position you can be in to make sure that you get a return of your capital. So again, out of the 900 million, about 170 of EB5 funds, and the balance funded by developer and home builder equity. This is just a letter from our president, Chris Folger, just reassuring our investors that we do not need EB5 funds to complete this project. We very much appreciate the EB5 funds, and we look forward to participating in the program for many years to come, but it's not a requirement for us to be successful in this project or for us to continue construction in this project. We are building Cota Vera with or without EB5. So for us, it's a great opportunity to participate in the program, and for our investors, they can rest knowing that we're not strapped for cash, that we don't need this financing to continue, but we very much appreciate it. As an investor in the first position, we actually offer a deed of trust on our additional land in the Otay Ranch. Here you can see a map of the land that HomeFed owns in the Otay Ranch, and in each parcel you can see a valuation. So the land in Otay Ranch is worth far in excess of the funding we're looking for, which is 171 million. These valuations are actually dated. We've just recently updated this appraisal, which is provided by Cushman and Wakefield. And this number is actually closer to 400 million. So needless to say, we're putting our investors in a very safe position to make sure that not only are they getting their jobs, but that they get their money back when the time comes. The cash flow from the project far exceeds our EB5 loan obligation. More than 3 times the EB5 loan. This is net cash flow after we pay our other obligations. So again, and we're seeing greater success than we ever hoped. We're selling homes at higher prices than anticipated. So this number is actually very conservative. But the point being, there are substantial funds available to repay our EB5 investors from our home sales and our lot sales. This is also very important and a nice benefit for our EB5 investors, and that is the 5-year loan term. Many projects will have loan extensions that allow them to keep the money for an additional 1, 2, or 3 years. Our loan term is 5 years, and we are not allowed to extend that loan if the investor has filed their I-829. And if you're from the Philippines, you should hopefully have that I-829 filed within 5 years. Unlike some other countries that Nick was talking about, they are retrogressed, and it takes them longer to get their approvals and their conditional green cards and their I-829 filed. But for many of our investors, the I-829 should be filed at 5 years, which means you will receive a refund at 5 years. You don't have to wonder when you're going to get your investment back. This is a timeline of our project, of some of the key dates. What's interesting to note here is that we actually purchased this land in 1998, and it took us 15 years to get our government approvals to start construction. That's to illustrate how difficult it is to build and develop projects like this in California. And that's what makes it such a special project and what makes it so valuable. When you see the map of all the land HomeFed owns, it's truly remarkable, and it's very, very valuable because all of that land has the government approvals necessary to commence construction right away. So we actually started construction on this project in 2018. We're well underway with home building. We had our first home sales about a year ago now. We're leasing apartments, and we expect to continue construction on this project for about the next 4 years. These are just a few of the partners that we work with on the EB5 side of things, as well as the construction operations. So in summary, these are some of the highlights of an investment with HomeFed and in Cota Vera. And real quickly, HomeFed is putting in a significant amount of equity into this project. We're not highly levered. We're not in need of cash. We believe in this project wholeheartedly. 15 jobs per investor, most of which have already been created. So that takes that risk off the table. First position trustee is the safest position in any capital stack. And that's where you definitely want to be. The cash flow from this project, more than substantial and necessary to repay our EP5 investors. HomeFed Corporation is a highly reputable developer with a public company background. We do things by the book. We do them the right way. And we have a loan term that's only 5 years. We want to get you your money back as quickly as possible. We know EB5 is a process, and we're here with you for the duration. But we also want you to be repaid as soon as you're able. There's no reason that we should keep your money longer than necessary. So that was very, very quick. But I hopefully shared some interesting things with you that you might feel are important as you look into the EB5 program and you're seeking, a partner to invest your funds with, and we hope that we can be that partner with you, and we look forward to helping you any way we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Trevor. Thank you, Nicolai. Lily, do you have something to add to that before we go to Q&A?
No, I think I'm good. Trevor did a good job. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can please feel free to type in your questions. But there's a question here. How long has HomeFed been connected with EB5 projects, and how has their success rate been in terms of successful EB5 applications for citizenship?
I'll answer that. So we first started with EB5 in 2016. So as of today, we have over 400 investors in the EB5 program. We have not had any project-related issues in terms of successful applications. Occasionally an investor has a personal issue with source of funds or something along those lines. But as it relates to the project and the viability of the project, we have 100% success rate. We have no issues with our investors.
Thank you, Trevor.
If I could just jump in here and clarify that the EB5 application is not for citizenship. It's initially for a green card. So this is not, the EB5 project is not buying citizenship. Many people sort of refer to EB5 pejoratively as a citizenship for sale kind of structure. That's not what it is. Again, you initially get a green card, and then you have to demonstrate the job creation that we discussed. And then 5 years after getting the green card, then you can apply for citizenship.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. There's another question. I guess this is for our lawyer, Nicolai. Can I travel back to the US from the Philippines with my travel document after obtaining it through concurrent filing without getting a US visa when I return?
Yes, you can. That's exactly the big benefit of it. So it's the travel card. I called it a combo card. Actually, we're now just in the last couple of weeks seeing USCIS issue separate cards, but the card that you get looks very much like a green card, and it allows you, it functions a little bit like a passport. So it allows you to board a plane and enter the US without obtaining a visa.
So that's really what I was referring to, which is a game changer, right? So right after say you were in the US studying or working in an H1, you actually could apply and do the concurrent filing while you're in the US, which you mentioned takes between around 5 months. And when they return to the Philippines after getting that card while they're here, then they they will never have to apply for a US visa again.
Correct.
Super, super wonderful. Another question, I guess it's a follow-up. So after they get their work status adjustment, right, of status, and they get their work documentation on the concurrent filing, they're able to obtain their social security number for work purposes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Another question. I think this is for Trevor and Lily. The return of the investment after 5 years, is that guaranteed?
There's no guarantee. I mean, that is very clearly stated in the program. You know, there's no guarantee that your money will be refunded. It is an at-risk investment, but we can mitigate those risks by, providing the collateral and the security to protect the investor's interests.
So it's just like, no, go ahead, Lily.
Sorry, yeah, if I may add. So HomeFed is one of the very, very few project or developer or regional centers that provides the first deed of trust to the EB5 investors. So most of the project, EB5 investment either is a equity investment or they are second position loan that is subordinate to the senior loan. But HomeFed provides the first deed of trust to the EB5 investors. That's the way they mitigate the risk.
Yeah, so it's very secure if you come in first lien holder in a project. Thank you. There's another question.
I would just,
yes, go ahead.
Can I just add to that? I just wanted to echo what Trevor said, which is that people should understand that a key requirement of EB5 is risk. So the US government and the program rules require that there be an at-risk investment. So the notion of guarantees is something that would violate those at-risk requirements.
Got it. So the guarantee is not, it's not guaranteed for this investment, but then again, as investors, you have to choose the investment vehicle for the EB5 to guarantee that you're, to guarantee to yourself that you're making a proper investment, right? So that's why you do the due diligence and actually check that the investment that you're investing into for the EB5 is a sound investment such as this. So anyway, there's another question here, and I think this goes to the developer. Does the investment have yields? So when you place your 8,000, do you get yields?
It does. It's very small. It is only 0.25%. Again, you should view your return as a green card. There are projects that pay much higher, yields, but that comes with risk.
Okay. Thank you. So there's another question here. If I own property in the US, can I borrow against it in the US and tap into my equity to fund my EB5 investment?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can absolutely do that. And many of my clients choose to do that. The USCIS is going to want to know how you were able to afford the property that you are tapping into, getting a mortgage loan on. So generally, we might provide, tax returns or other evidence showing what we call a pattern of income sufficient to have purchased the asset. But generally, the answer to that question is yes, you can absolutely do that.
Okay, thank you. Another question regarding the 5-year, do I need to stay in the US for the entire 5 years? Or the 5 year starts from the time application has been approved?
The 5 years on this, it starts when your funds are released from escrow into the project.
Is this question
it's unclear.
asking about the
question is about the stay. at what point in the process are they required to actually stay in the United States?
Yeah. So when you, taking concurrent filing aside, right? So when you get your conditional permanent resident status, that's your conditional green card, at that point in time, you have certain obligations with respect to maintaining your resident status. The United States, unlike other countries, doesn't have a specific number of days that you have to be in the US. Rather, the standard is based on your intention. Do you intend to maintain your permanent resident status? And even though that's a little slightly more complicated than, say, just having to be in a country for a certain number of days, the good thing is that intention is subjective. So as long as clients are coming into the United States regularly, typically staying or at least every 6 months, then they're not going to have any issue in terms of someone finding that they've abandoned their residency. And that's really what we have to be aware of and strategize with clients about, is the perception that they've abandoned their residency. So most people are traveling in and out of the United States, and you're not going to have an issue in terms of that abandonment. If there is a scenario that comes up that requires you to be absent from the United States for an extended period, let's say you have a business transaction or you have a relative that falls ill, you can file something called a re-entry permit, and that actually allows you to stay outside the US for 1 or 2 years, and you can extend that permit as needed. So there are many strategies to employ, but there isn't an obligation to be in the United States for any specific period of time. In fact, many of my clients, when they obtain the visa from a consulate, they'll just fly to the US, they'll stay a couple of weeks, and then they go back. They literally don't have to leave the airport. They can do something we call flag polling, where they just go and trigger their conditional permanent resident status and then fly back.
Interesting. Thank you. There's another question. Can you reunify family at any time, or does it have to be one time and together? So the whole family, husband, wife, kids, right? Husband invests. Do they all have to do it at one time?
No, they don't. So they can go at different times. So if you use concurrent filing can only be done or must initially be done by the principal applicant. So if the whole family is in the US, then the whole family can adjust status together. Typically, when you have a scenario where you have a family member that's coming later, it's in the consular processing context. So let's say wife and child or children are in the US, but husband wants to come later. That's fine. The husband can what we call follow to join. So 1 or 2 or 3 or even 10 years later, they could go to the consulate and complete their visa process. As long as the qualifying relationship exists at the time that the principal applicant gets the visa, i.e. the marriage, that spouse can follow to join at any time.
Perfect. Thank you. What is the minimum investment? I think we went over this. It's 800,000 for the investment. That has to be invested into escrow and source of funds verified by the USCIS. There's another question about concurrent filing. Once they get the combo card that you were referring to, Nicolai, do they have to stay in the US continuously as a resident at that point? Are they allowed to leave at that point when they have the card, or do they have to be in the United States?
It's the same, similar requirement to the one that I just articulated. So they can travel in and out, but it's not quite the same residence requirement, but we don't advise that people stay out for a significant period of time, certainly not more than 6 months. I should also mention that there is a period of time between when you file your I-526 and when you get your EAD card approved. We are seeing that period of time is between 3 to 6 months. Sometimes USCIS adjudication is a little difficult to predict. But during that period of time, you do have to wait in the United States until that combo card is issued. You can't travel unless you're in H-1B status. There's an exception for H-1Bs. But let's say you're there as a student, you do have to wait until you get that EAD card.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think we'll take one more question because we are mindful of time. How long does the process take if I decide I want to do this now?
So, I mean, there's the initial process where there's an investment process and an immigration process, and both can be done pretty quickly before you actually file your I-526 petition. So let's say 4 to 6 weeks would be a reasonable period of time where you engage me and Lily and Trevor separately, and we would strategize about your source of funds and file your I-526 petition. At that point, we would expect to see USCIS adjudicate that petition in probably 18 to 24 months. It's a little hard to predict because COVID has kind of skewed USCIS processing times, and we're still emerging out of that. But there are a couple of significant things that have happened. I mentioned the Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. That act really shows the importance to which the U.S. Congress attaches to the EB-5 program. That's why they passed that reform. And in that legislation, there are specific targets for USCIS to meet in terms of adjudication timeframes. In addition, USCIS recently held a stakeholder engagement with the IPO, that's the Investor Program Office. So EB-5 has a special dedicated office in Washington, D.C. that does nothing but EB-5, further showing how important this program is to the United States. We heard from USCIS that they're drastically staffing up and they are onboarding lots of new adjudicators. So we are very hopeful that those adjudication timeframes are going to come down. Exactly when that happens is hard to say, but I'm going to say 18 to 24 months because that was the historic adjudication timeframe that we were seeing before COVID. So at that point in time, you then do the consular process, which takes about 3 months. So from the time you file the I-526 petition until you get your green card, probably about 2 years. That would be a rough estimate. Now, concurrent filing is different, but
yeah,
right, because you're getting that hybrid green card, if you will, much sooner. But in terms of when you will actually have green card in hand, probably about 2 years.
Okay, but the good news is, like, ever since the program has started for the EB-5, never in the past have we seen concurrent filing. So that's really good.
Correct. That's correct.
Thank you. I guess this is where we end. I'd like to thank our speakers and of course our audience. Thank you for joining us today. We are available for free consultations with our lawyer here, Attorney Nicolai. And if you need to zoom into the investment, we are happy to bring in Trevor and Lily. Please, my number is on the screen. Please reach out. My email address is there. We are happy to answer all your questions one-on-one. Please reach out. And remember, this is actually a very good program. If you're already here with a family, legally as a student working here on an H1, excuse me, or even visiting and then changed your mind. There is a way that you could do this faster, and it's never happened before. So we actually are doing this because we wanted to present this to our children that are in school and university here, that when they graduate, could not get a job unless they were work sponsored. And if they were work sponsored, they would actually be limiting themselves into the choice of jobs that they can get, the work that they can do, right? So it's actually good. It actually also provides for discounted tuition rates later on when they have this. So it's actually something that I wanted to share with you today for our children, and giving them a plan B, second residency. I think we all know that everything is evolving with COVID, with the war in Ukraine. So having a plan B is good. And of course, for us Filipinos, most especially for us, because our passport does not take us to many places. I think once you obtain citizenship in the US, you are visa-free to so many countries. It's unbelievable. It's something that we cannot even think to do with a Philippine passport. So please take this opportunity to ponder on this EB5 opportunity that the US has to offer. Thank you again to everybody. Have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.